Well, joining us from Dumfries in Scotland is Finlay Asher. He's an aerospace engineer and member of Safe Landing, a global community of aviation workers and enthusiasts. A warm welcome to the programme, Finlay. Before we start talking about the industry and the effects on travellers, I also want to have a look at some of the things that we've been seeing in the wake of this war. We've got Flight Tracker up on the screen at the moment, Finlay, and we're looking at two major diverted routes. One that goes across the Caspian Sea, across Azerbaijan and Georgia to the north before ending up in Europe. The other one to the south clearly loops all the way across Egypt and Saudi Arabia. This entire region is just an empty space with pretty much zero flights other than military flights are operating there. Can you explain what's going on here, Finlay? Because it must be a pretty difficult time to be, for instance, an air traffic controller in Georgia.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, within aviation, safety is always the number one priority. So you're seeing initially some flights getting cancelled and then airlines trying to manage with the airspace closures that we've seen. So obviously, if there's an airspace closure over a conflict zone, airlines will stay well away from that. But it will mean that they have to fly significantly further than they were planning to do. And you're right, those sort of safe corridors in the sky also become more congested as everyone wants to use those and avoid the conflict region.
And Finlay, we're looking at these numbers: 4.4 million passengers stranded, cargo traffic down by a fifth. I mean, to an engineer, this looks like a kind of system-wide failure of resilience, doesn't it? I mean, how fragile is the aviation sector as it currently stands? Are the days of cheap fuel and open, stable skies, are they over?
Well, yeah, this affects the aviation industry in a number of ways. I mean, firstly, there's just all the cancellations and needing to find people new flights. Then as the conflict progresses, they're needing to manage, find alternative routes. That might mean they have to fly further, carry more fuel on board. It might also mean they need to do a different route and stop to refuel. All of that is additional cost. And then, yeah, because, you know, the Middle East is such a major supplier of global oil, then the price of jet fuel has increased quite rapidly as well. And that is a major cost for airlines. It could be anything from sort of a quarter or 20% of an airline's cost. So if that suddenly spikes, the costs to airlines will increase and they'll pass that on to customers. And then you'll see lower demand for flights as well. And then obviously there's just like a big ongoing uncertainty here. Nobody knows exactly how long the conflict will last. Obviously, if you think about the Ukraine conflict that started a few years ago now, there was a big spike in energy prices there. And that conflict is still going on now and is still having ripple effects. So, even if this conflict was over tomorrow, I think those ripple effects will continue throughout the year and will affect the industry. The industry is, sensitive to various global issues like financial crashes and global pandemics. You saw what happened during COVID. And this is another, security threat that can happen as well.
Do you think the industry has adapted fast enough, given the shocks that it's seen in the not too distant past? We're talking about, as you mentioned, the Ukraine war, but also the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, you used to design engines for Boeing and Airbus. I mean, the industry's big promise was sustainable aviation fuel and even electric flight. I mean, in a world where fuel costs are going through the roof because of this war, does that mean that transition will be hastened?
Well, I think it demonstrates how important that transition is. I mean, if you look at where energy is produced at the moment, it's very concentrated in particular areas, the Middle East being a prime example, but also Russia, as you mentioned. And that means the cost of flying, but also the cost of shipping and road transport and heating people's homes is inextricably linked to this global market for fossil fuels, which can be volatile. And it's resulted in, big cost of living crisis for many people all around the world, even people that are very far away from where these conflicts occur. So yeah, aviation is susceptible as well. I mean, it kind of underlines the importance of moving to lower carbon energy types. That's true when it comes to buildings and particularly ground transport, where we can get away from that from fossil fuels faster and have more sort of domestically, locally produced renewable energy. And that will be true of aviation in the future as well. We're not going to be able to get there in the next 5 to 10 years. The technology and the fuels required for aviation will take a lot longer to scale. But absolutely, it's the move to those technologies and fuels is not just about sustainability, it's also fundamentally about energy security and energy independence as well.
And what about the issue of safety as well, both of the industry as we know it and indeed the aircraft facing the possibility of these geopolitical shocks lingering? I mean, is there still an industry for the next generation of pilots and engineers to work in?
Yeah, well, I think something that's really important is we need to have our eyes open to the various threats that face the aviation industry. Our organisation is particularly concerned that, we're actually planning to double the number of flights of conventional aircraft over the next couple of decades. But you've seen we could have another global pandemic like COVID. We could have that next year, and we're going to have similar impacts. If you look only slightly longer term, the next 10 years, the climate crisis is going to become more and more of a threat in terms of, many of the tourist destinations that we know and love will be more difficult to visit. People might need to migrate because of the effects of droughts, rising sea levels, increased storms. And actually, a lot of airports themselves are located very close to sea level, and therefore our industry itself is susceptible to sea level rise. So we would like to see the industry planning in a more serious way for these things. The reality is the transition to alternative technology and fuels is going to be expensive. And the industry will need to pay for that, and that will mean air travellers need to pay for that transition. And we expect the cost of flying will increase as a result. And we think we could be doing a lot more to manage the risks there, raise revenue and get that transition underway. So yeah, I think what you see is the aviation industry currently is quite volatile. That does have an impact on workers who are trained, and they often take on a lot of debt if you're a pilot, for example. And then when a crisis happens, often you're not looked after by the company. Often there's a lot of redundancies, and we go through these boom and bust cycles. So we don't know how big a crisis the Iranian conflict is going to be. It depends how long it plays out. But it is indicative of the sort of thing that can happen to the industry.
Yeah, it sounds like the aviation industry is kind of the canary in the coal mine when it comes to geopolitical shocks. Finlay Asher, many thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, after days of rapid oil price increase,